Hi, everybody. I'm Anna McKerrow, and this is my Magical People series. Now, today I'm very happy to be here with an amazing writer called Halo Quinn, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. Halo.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Halo. I'm based in the west of Wales, right on the coast. So I'm at the back of the building, but if I go out my front door, there's the sea. And the past few weeks, there have been dolphins in the bay every evening,
Oh my
which
gosh, wow. Oh, that's so lovely. I'm so jealous.
it's really lovely. It's really
Yeah.
nice. So,
Oh,
so
it's
yeah, that's sort of locates me really. But yeah.
fabulous. And so tell me a bit, and tell everybody about, what you do. And you were just telling me, in fact, so you can tell everybody, you have just quit your day job to concentrate solely on witchery and that manner of thing. So tell us about that.
So I was working in customer service and retail and what have you for I don't know, for more than half my life I've been doing that. And I like the meeting the people and helping people out, making people smile, and that's all very nice. But yes, what I do, what my passion is, and what I've done in between all of that has always been magic.
Mm.
So right back when I was young, from before I even found out that it was a real thing, I was absolutely and utterly obsessed with fairies and magic and the trees, being friends with the trees and going out, and which I thank my mother for, because she was very much like, trees are people too.
Oh, that's nice. Good. You had a
Yeah,
good early start with fairies in nature.
very
Okay.
much so.
Yeah.
Very
And
much
then
so.
what happened?
So do you want the story of
Yeah.
how I ended up here? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Give us your life story.
My life story. So obviously always utterly pixie led, to the point that I found a tiny ring in the playground and it had stars in it. And I took it to my school teacher and I said, so I found this ring. And he went, okay, go from classroom to classroom and ask if anyone has lost a ring. And if no one has lost a ring, then it was a gift for you from the fairies.
Oh, wow. How
Like
nice.
I Yeah, which I thought
Yeah.
was just a lovely way of cultivating that for me.
Oh, that's nice. And was that
Yeah.
was that in Wales out of interest or no?
No,
Because I
no,
kind
that
of
was
think
in
of
Swindon.
Swindon, not a particularly, you would think, place where people believe in fairies very much, but see, magical Swindon. Okay. Uh, all right. Continue.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not the sort of place. Growing up, I didn't find it to be a particularly magic friendly place in terms of the people, but it just goes to show that wherever you are, there's still that connection to it from in the people and in the place.
Mm.
So yeah, when I was about 10, then that obsession continued, and I gathered lots of books on fairies and all sorts as a pre 10-year-old. And then when I was about 10, one of my friends had been messing around with a Ouija board, of all
Oh.
things.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. And she got her and her other friends got very, very freaked out about ghosts and hauntings as a result of this. They
Mm.
absolutely terrified themselves. And she eventually came clean to me and told me what had been going on. And it just my little ears pricked up. And of course, the first thing I did was hit the library. I
Mm.
went into my school library and I'm like, there's got to be books on this. If this is real, there's got to be books on it. And
Okay.
yeah,
Were they in your
surprisingly
school
there were.
library? Really? What a very
Yeah,
progressive school this was.
it was, yeah. So it was very strange. I actually, so in that library, there was on the sort of religion, I'm just getting one of my books out.
Mm.
There was sort of the religious studies books, and there were these really old, as far as I was concerned, utterly ancient Bibles there. So
Mm.
that proper leather embossed, and you picked it up and you felt your hands vibrate with the age.
Mm.
Next to those was a sort of half a shelf of new agey stuff. There was a little book on something like the Usborne Book of Ghosts.
Okay.
And I went, oh, okay, yeah, that'll tell me what's going on. And then next to it was the Usborne, or the equivalent of the Usborne Book of Witches. It probably wasn't Usborne, but yeah. And it had a bit about the history of witches and the beliefs around it. And there were mentions in there about the cunning folk and about people actually practicing magic and superstition and folklore and things like that. And I went, hang on a second, so this is real. And the other thing that I found there, this isn't the copy of the book that I found there, because that I took it back, I went to get it out again and it went missing and I never saw it again. I found this in Glastonbury. So this is, it's probably backward. It's the Psychic Explorer.
Oh, okay. Jonathan Cain, yes, he's an astrologer, isn't he? He was for one of the major newspapers for a long time, wasn't he, I think?
Yeah, he was. And so this has got sections on astrology and how to read palms and reading the tarot, seeing the aura. And then right at the very back, there's a section on ceremonial magic. I was like, hang on a minute, this is stuff that people actually do. So bear in mind, little 10-year-old me going, what? Okay. And so I started, I picked up a tarot deck and I started practicing magic there and then. And very, very quickly, the stuff that I found was on witchcraft and paganism. And it was about, there was stuff on the gods, on nature worship, on connecting with the energy, and on listening and tuning in to the world. So A Witch Alone was one of the books I started with, and Spiral Dance by Starhawk. And me and some friends got together and we'd sit on the field outside the football grounds in Swindon. We'd sit in a little circle doing energy exercises and things. And they gradually drifted away, but I never did, because it sang to something in me. And I felt like from finding that, I was like, no, I've come home.
Awesome.
So fast forward to now, I ended up in Wales when I went to university age 20 and found all the myths and legends and stories here. I'd already slightly been introduced to them before. I think I blame Ceridwen for me ending up here in the first place. But yeah, and that it's just sort of continued from there. And because I've had about a quarter of a decade now since then, there's been lots of time for me to explore all the different avenues, and there's always something new and there's always something deeper. And because it's all so much about connection and relationship and listening and following, I've just found myself sort of wandering pixie-led through the wilds of magic and West Wales and the world, and getting excited at people about it.
Yeah, what a lovely story as well. And I'm always fascinated with how people come to magic, and it's interesting how often it's very young and if it's not a person or a relative, but it is often a book or a film or something. I mean, 10 is quite young, isn't it, to be reading about ceremonial magic? When you were 10 and you were reading about that, did you get it, or did it kind of did you revisit it over the years, and what was your perception of it at 10?
So the stuff that's obviously in that book is quite simple.
Okay.
So it's simple rituals, and to be honest, it just made sense to me. There were things like there's a ceremonial bath and using correspondences to do with the planets, and I was like, oh, okay. So and of course I'd grown up on astrology with the sun signs and what have you. Everyone does their horoscopes. Okay, so I knew about Leo and the sun and Libra and the moon and Venus and those sorts of connections. And so it just sort of fit in with there, and the fact that then there were sections in there that were talking about plants and the way the plants correspond to the planets, and you sort of, as soon as you start looking at things, you can see the patterns. And yeah, my depth of understanding has definitely, I want to say broadened, but deepened,
yes.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah
but that's it's just been adding in layers, really.
Because amazing. And so tell us a bit about where you are now in terms of, so I know that you have written quite a few books now, and also about the website as well.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so where I am at the moment. So at the moment, I've been practicing for over 2 decades, and sharing that. I've been teaching as at various events and workshops and things. A lot of the work that I do is to do with the way that stories interact with our lives, and how the stories contain the seeds of magic.
Okay.
So that's that those myths and legends and things, the way that they open gateways to meeting deities and powers, the way they map out ways in which we can listen and follow and shape our lives. So a lot of that informs my work. Obviously, I've continued with my passion for the Fae. R.J. Stewart was a huge influence on me. I found one of his books, and again through books, I found one of his books when I was in my teens, and that sort of shaped the way I approached it. So yeah, so sorry.
No, carry on. I was just thinking, R.J. Stewart is the person who, it was like a tell us about that. It's the account of, it's a channeled fairy experience. Am I right in thinking that one? Is that the right person?
Which one's that?
Is it there's a person whose real name was something else, and it may have been a woman, and I may be thinking of the wrong person, but was quite famous for writing about experiences with fairies.
R.J. Stewart does. I don't know if you'd call it channeled.
No.
More sort of meeting them, and he does a lot with path workings and integrating, so sort of using the ceremonial structured magic as a way of going, okay, well, how do we overlay that, or use that as a doorway to where the folk tales take us.
I think I'm thinking of somebody else. However, sorry for interrupting. It will come to me who I'm thinking of.
No, that's okay. And when it does, I'd love to hear it. You'll suddenly shout out a name in about 5 minutes time.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Carry on.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the obviously pre the COVID time, so pre 2020, it was a few years before that, I joined OBOD, the Order of Bards of Eights and Druids. And I did that primarily because some of my friends were involved in it, and we wanted to have a structure to work through some things together. And so off the back of that, a couple of us ran rituals each of the festivals for a year. I've done a couple of hand fastings in that guise and things like that. So I've sort of, and before that I was doing it for the local pagan society. And then that gave me an opportunity to provide that sort of magical ritual touchstones, those anchor points throughout the year for the local community. And that meant a lot to me, because the way that magic and paganism and witchcraft has influenced my life, and has the way that it supports me, feels like a good thing that I want to be able to share with as many people as possible, or at least the people who are interested. I want to give that space to go, okay, look, the world is magical. Underneath and behind the everyday, that the bits that we often miss because we're busy working on surviving, there is this undercurrent of beauty and wonder and enchantment and just pure magic and connection. And those rituals provided touchstones for that. And it's a similar reason that I've written the books that I've written. So the first one I did was working with fairy magic, but working with it was kind of for people, or very much for people, who feel that resonance in themselves and wanted to find a way to develop that further. I've just handed into the editor one that's actually for working with, it's sort of the next step on from that, working with the information that we can find in the folk tales and the stories, to work with the folkloric fairies and the beings of the land around us. So it's sort of stepping on from that. I may have rambled off topic slightly, apologize. But yeah, so it's that providing that space for people is really important for me. And I've been seeking ways to do that. Running, I do an Elements of Magic class, so a course to get people to touch base with those foundational pieces. And I ran it the last time as a group where we met once a fortnight online, in order to talk over the things and share our experiences. And there's a group forum for discussing those things. So it's very much about that kind of reconnection at each point for me, which is why I've gone on as I can monologue for quite a while.
Go for it.
It's what sorry.
No, I feel like this is moving towards what your website is all about and what you're offering that way.
Yeah,
and it should.
I was going to say, thank you. This is why I've put together. So I've started a project. It's been loosely going on, this project for the past year, called the Enchanted Academy, and I finally put this together as a proper professional looking website. I've done it myself, but I've done it as tidy as I can, as a container for the various courses and bits of information and things for people to actually come together. And I went for the name for two reasons. One, because enchantment is key to what I do, and for all the time that I've been offering courses and writing and sharing the information, running rituals and doing this acts of service that I've done in the community, my goal has been to re-enchant the world and help people re-enchant their lives. So enchantment, but the other reason is because the initials of it are TEA, and to be honest, T is magic.
Of course, T is very important. That's a very happy accident, isn't it? Or not so much of an accident. And so if people are interested in finding the website, this is going live very shortly, I understand. Yep.
Yeah, it's it's actually technically up already, but I'm going to be putting a whole bunch of bits and pieces up and advertising it, so launching it officially on Friday the 13th, so in 2 days' time.
Yay! Yes, lovely. Okay, brilliant. Well, congratulations on that. That's a lovely synchronous occurrence for us talking today as well.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I was also going to ask you, Halo, I think, and you've touched on this quite a lot about your, I always ask people about what their overall kind of belief structure is, and you've talked a little bit about that and where you've come from. But what is could you say something about what your magical practice or it looks like on a more daily level? What do you do? What are some of your favorite things to do on that kind of in that way?
So, funny story. I find it funny anyway. I got asked by being interviewed for something else, and I got asked, what do witches do? And I answered the question, and then I got asked it at least 3 more times. And I'm thinking, how am I not answering the question? I was saying things like what I've been saying with the, listening to the energies of the natural world and tuning into that. And it's about relationship with the beings. So I operate on quite what we nowadays call an animistic model, where the other beings in other things in the world, everything has a spirit and a life, and we work with them rather than against them, rather than using things. And I walked away after the fourth time we'd finished up with the thing, and I was thinking, how did I not answer that? And I realized that what they were asking is, well, what do you physically do? What does it look like? So I'm glad you phrased it that way.
That's okay, because I think to people who are not familiar at all, I think would appreciate that kind of, because otherwise it's hard to visualize that.
Yeah.
And actually, even if you're a bit familiar with some things, then people's practices are so different. Especially day to day. It's quite interesting to know, I think.
Yeah, very much so. So I passed that afterwards. I was like, so what they were asking is, how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that distinction was, it made me giggle anyway. I thought I got such the wrong end of the stick of that. So you can probably see in the background, I've got bookcases here, and there's altars around my space.
Okay.
So one of the big parts of what I do is have altars, because I'm not only a witch, but I am also ADHD, very neurodivergent. And so if it's not visible, then I can lose track of the days and just sort of bimble by without doing anything tangible. But part of what I do as a sort of ongoing thing, I have like a religious commitment to truth telling, to honesty. So that weaves throughout my life. When I go to sleep, sometimes I will ask the spirits that I work with to dream with me, and so I'll ask to meet them in my dreams. And then I keep a journal that I write in, and sometimes more than others, and I'll track patterns. I often pull tarot cards or runes, depending on, I'll sort of cycle through which one feels like it makes the most sense at the time. So I'm doing divination in order to communicate. And when I'm on the ball, I will sort of sit and I'll start, or more often than not, end my day before I go to sleep with a set of prayers, and in order to tune into and connect to the divine, and the divine parts of myself. So a large proportion of my training is in the Anderson fairy tradition. So I operate basically within that sort of framework, where there's an important part about working towards alignment of all the parts of yourself.
Okay, I haven't come across this, so explain that to me.
Okay. So the psychic etheric anatomy model of a person in fairy is that we are triple souled beings. So we're three souls in a body, and our body is also a soul in that kind of weird paradoxical way.
Okay.
And so the different parts of ourselves operate and interact with the world differently. And you can see this in lots of different ways. You can see it as a psychological model, sort of our instinctive childlike selves, and then our conscious rationalizing selves, and then our divine spirit selves as sort of psychological or energetic or literal, or however you want to work with it. But what you'll find in magical practice is that often people say they want something, and they might do magic towards it, but then they self-sabotage. So one of the key parts of being able to operate effectively in the world on a magical and a practical level is having all the parts of yourself in agreement and in alignment. And once they're in alignment, once your instinctive childlike self is in alignment with your sort of rationalizing self, and your emotions and your rationalization line up, then you have a clearer connection to spirit. So this is sort of one of the aspects of that. So there's a particular prayer and alignment exercise that I do. As I say, when I'm on the ball, I'll do it normally at bedtime, but also throughout the day. So there's a little breathing, checking in, sort of a breath. You send a breath up to your higher self, and then listen to the response. So you sort of tune into that. So I'll do that throughout the day. The altar that I've got by my door, every time I go past it, especially when I'm leaving, if I'm going out somewhere, I'll take a second or two to touch the central stone and honor my ancestors, the Fae and the spirits of the land, and the gods and guides and guardians that walk with me. So I check in with them on a daily basis, and then I tune in to feel for the response. And that keeping up those connections is what helps me the most.
Mm.
There's also the sort of energetic component of that, of grounding, connecting to the earth. I will go out and the sea being out the front, I'll go and breathe with the sea for a bit. I like to go and make sure I sit and watch the sunset on a regular basis and go and visit the trees, and sort of just listen and tune into that. And then last month I had so this is an example of something I'll do when there's something big coming up. I had my Viva for my PhD. So I was coming to the end of that and I needed some help. So what I did with that was I constructed a bind rune, because the Norse deities are the ones that turned up earliest for me. And of course they came with runes. So I constructed a bind rune and a chant, and then I used that as a spell working, and with a lit a candle, set up a little altar for those gods, and went, holy crap, please help. Light the candle, chant the thing, picture the rune. And then when I was doing the Viva itself, I lit the candle beforehand, and they kick you out towards the end. They send you away for 20 minutes, half an hour, while they debate what they're going to do with your future, and then they call you back in.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that time period, I was chanting the bind rune and concentrating on that, and just going, please help, please, please, please let this go well. That sort of, and sending out that magic. So yeah, and then of course as I mentioned before, on a less daily level, I'll gather together when I can with others and do a little ritual to mark the seasonal changes. Because that helps us bring it back to the passing of time, what the land's doing, what our community's doing, and connecting back in with there. Yeah, there you go. There's some of it. The other major thing that I do is that I'll write. So I write poetry as spells.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Okay. So if I've got something that I need to process, or something that I want to conjure, then I'll sit and I might light a candle, I might set up an altar, or I might just get my journal. And I've got I'll show you. I made like a case for it, which
Very
is
nice.
yeah, it's literally just a piece of leather that wraps around with a bit of elastic that it's red leather my brother gave me. But in the back, I've got a 7-pointed star, because I work with a 7-pointed star rather than the pentagram. So that is then underlying my writing. And my pen, I have a pen that I chose and dedicated to that work. So I use it for my regular stuff, because I weave magic throughout my life, and I'll mark runes in the corner of what I'm doing, or the astrological symbols or whatever. But when there's something specific that I'm like, okay, I want to enchant for that and conjure for that, I'll write a poem for it. And I'll sit and I'll tune in, and I'll tune into my spirits, and I'll tune into that magic. And then I will write what I'm imagining as poetic thing as coming. And that action of manifesting the emotion and the thought into words, into ink on the page, is kind of sympathetic magic for telling the universe, I want this desire to be manifested into the physical, tangible realm.
That's interesting. It's all interesting. And how do you find then that works in a practical way? Sorry, I'm thinking around this. So sometimes, we might do something very specific, like sigil working, to get particular results, but doing a poem seems quite different in a way, although you are still kind of writing and scribing. So what am I asking here? I don't know. I really yeah, say something about that.
So it kind of operates in a similar way. When you create a sigil, you charge it up and you send it off, but the creating, the charging and the sending happen in the process of the writing. So from when you open the book or the page and put the pen to paper, that's the process of starting the creation, but you're putting the energy into it as you're writing. And because you're working through that, you're honing the intention as you go. So it kind of focuses the energy as you go through until you put the final full stop or whatever, underline, however you want to mark it as ending. If it's something that is, so quite a lot of the things that I enchant for can be things that are shareable, if you like, similar goals that other people might find useful. One of the things I might do with it is then send it off into the world by posting it online. And then it goes out into the world. And then whenever other people read it, they get that piece of magic and that connection to that magic as well, which they can choose to take on or not. But also it adds that extra bit of charge to it.
It's a fascinating area about, I think, writing and magic in general, and that both the sort of creative processes used on both sides, and just that, I think, as a writer as well, I felt this in lots of different ways, in that there's a lot of magic in creating something that didn't exist before, because, if it's something that other people can visualize in some way, be it a poem or a story or something, then you've literally kind of built it, and then other people can go in and have their experience of it, which I still find remarkable. Really, it's a remarkable thing to be able to do. But also, as you say, like, the use of language is such a common thing between creative writing and magic and spell work and things like that, and poetry and spell work, and that there's so much interesting overlap there, isn't there?
Very much so. I love the way that this is one of the reasons I have a commitment to honesty and to speaking the truth and not lying, is because if I always speak the truth, then every word that I say can be a spell. And the same with writing. If I always write the truth, then every word that I write can be a spell. Now, I'm not saying I'm always great at this and I get things wrong, and sometimes I trip up or I misunderstand, or I'm as prone to anyone else as at sort of negative self-talk or getting stuck in a spiral where I'm puzzled with things. But when I find myself doing that, I try to come out of it, because I'm like, no, I'm bespelling myself. I'm enchanting my life with those words, and it operates on psychological and energetic levels. And also when you're speaking to someone else, there's that way in which you're sharing that spell with them. It does also mean being quite careful with your ethics in what you say and what you put out there for other people. There are some of my poetry that's spell worked poetry I wouldn't put out into the world, because I'm like, well, no, that's personal to me, and that might have like hit people in ways that they don't want it to if I've done it with that kind of intention. But for the most part, I weave into it the intention of and the magic that it's going to be helpful rather than that. So does that make sense? That
Yes, no, it does totally to me.
Yeah.
And yes, exactly what you're saying about people's I was saying this to somebody earlier, in fact, that I think most people don't really appreciate how they manifest their own world and how powerful they are in doing so in a variety of different ways. In fact, we were talking about house clearing and hoarding and all that kind of physical manifestation of trauma in a house environment in that case. And anyway, which I kind of find fascinating. But I think because this is just my view, in the world at large, people don't have that quite magical view, I suppose, in that you are creating everything around you, and that language is such a huge part of that, and that we all know about don't negative self-talk and all of those things, but that it's so much bigger than that, isn't it? And as you say, there's a huge responsibility there, but quite a difficulty as well to not we are human, aren't we? And that, but we can definitely, as you say, bespell ourselves in these feeling like we're trapped, or feeling like things exist that they don't, or we're in a confusing situation, all of those things. It's quite a realization, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And working out that just that shift, the shift in language can help change your mind, can help change the magic around you. Yeah. It's a lot of power.
It really is. And I mean, also, I know that you don't have to be at all interested in magic to also know that, because most CBT practitioners will tell you that, and psychologists and counselors and people working in those areas as well, and neuro-linguistic programmers also, and lots of other people all kind of know that in a slightly different context. But
it's then adding in, carry
on.
It's then adding in that layer of, okay, I'm also affecting, in my model of reality, I'm also affecting the energetic substrate, I suppose, of underlying, and that then will not just affect me because it's affecting me psychologically, but it will also affect anyone around me.
Yes, yeah, that is a slightly different way of looking at it, isn't it? Okay. Ooh, well, that was an excellent I don't know, tangent we went on. Actually, I was going to ask you before I forget as well. Right, a little while back, you just mentioned at the beginning of talking about your daily processes, you were talking about having altars, and that was really useful as somebody with ADHD, and that has absolutely never occurred to me before. But that's such an interesting point, as being like a physical place where you go where you pay daily or regular attention to the thing that you've created it for, the god or the energy or the spirit or the whatever. And that's so fascinating. Are there any other things that you find as sort of from a neurodivergent point of view that are particularly helpful practices within magic?
A big part of it is having a lot of forgiveness for myself. So I can't make my brain do things the way that other people might recommend sometimes. And I fought that for a while. And then before I actually knew that it was because I have ADHD, I realized, well, actually, that's not how my brain works. That's not how I work. How do I reconcile that with what I'm supposed to be doing? And so I basically did a whole bunch of, okay, well, what is it? How is it that I can interact with things, and how can I work around these things? And I came to the fundamental thing of my spirituality and my magical practice is a practice. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't look the same from day to day. It doesn't matter if it changes dependent on where I'm actually staying or what home I'm living in. Because over the past 4 years, I've lived in quite a few different places because of various life changes. And each time I'm in a different place, I have to reconstruct what my practice looks like in that place because it's different. So having an understanding that this is going to change, rather than doing sitting meditation, I do moving meditation. And I try not to think of it as meditation anymore, because the word meditation conjures up an image of something that doesn't make sense to me, but that is what it is. So I'll do the sort of dropping down into that state while I'm walking across the land. I'll walk along the promenade here and back, sort of tuning into that. But yeah, the main things for me are having altars where I can see them, and having them include symbols and be ever evolving. Because if I leave them just the same, then my brain stops paying attention to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So as time goes on, sometimes I'll do it by the season, sometimes I'll do it by the moon, sometimes I'll do it just as and when things in life shift. I'll change in major ways the way that the altars are laid out, because then they're new and my brain goes, oh yes, this is something that we care about, rather than thinking about it while I'm on the bus somewhere. I also practiced and got to a point where I could do path workings on a train or on a bus. I'll put for when I'm doing well with audio, sometimes I can go months where I can't actually listen to a meditation or whatever on audio. It just doesn't make any sense, or like podcasts don't make any sense to my brain. I just sort of tune them out. But then I'll go through a phase where actually that works really well. So I make sure I've got them on my phone with my headphones, so that when I'm out and about, I can do them in the places where my body is feeling that movement of the train, for example. So I'm getting that sensory input, but I can sit and be physically not concentrating on other things. So I'm having the sensory input, but I'm listening to the audio. I've also found that if it's a spoken word guided meditation, if I put on appropriate music in the background, that helps. So I found a whole bunch of ADHD focus music or calming nature sounds or whatever, and I'll find the one that works for me that day. So yeah, lots of things like that, and playing with different senses as well. So including scents and and one big thing that I do is have jewelry. Like I'll choose different types of jewelry, which I think a lot of people do. But whatever magic that I'm working on, I'll have as a pendant that I put on and I leave on. I've got I can just leave the chain on, I can sleep on it. And I'll have that as something so that when I'm out and about, I'm reminded of what it is that I'm focusing on. So I'm not trying to rely on my faulty memory to remind me of the magic that I'm doing. And then that brings me back in.
Yeah. And that's a great practice for everybody, actually. That's a really, really good idea. Sorry, that's randomly reminded me of my friend very kindly bought me a pendant on a chain as a present recently, and it's one of the King Solomon seals. And we went out for a walk and it absolutely pissed it down in rain. And I got home and I realized she gave me the thing that brings rain. I was like, thank you for this extremely effective pendant. It's hilarious. I have to say, in the UK, we've had a lot of rain ever since I had that pendant. I feel like I might have manifested it.
Yeah, I'm going to blame you now.
Yeah, I know, it's totally my fault. Well, and King Solomon also. Anyway, thank you. That was a really interesting thing to hear about. I don't think I know I haven't spoken to anybody about ADHD specifically within magic before, and how a practitioner would work with it, and that's fascinating. So thank you. What else do I have to ask you? Lots of things. I always ask people as well, Halo, what are your, if you have any, maxims for living your life, or for everyone living a life? What gems of wisdom do you have for us?
Okay. I was thinking, you told me that you were going to ask me that, and I was thinking about it. I think, okay, what would I say? And I kept coming back to when I got given my first key for the house. My mum gave it to me on a key ring, and it was gold with red writing on it, and it's now mostly silver with little tiny bits of gold still in the engraved, and the tiniest hint of red. And she engraved my given name on one side. But it said, enjoy life, this is not a rehearsal. Yeah, that's what I aspire to. That's what I aim for. The other things that I fall back on a regular basis is that almost everyone is trying their best. If they could be doing any better, they would be. So and just holding on to that. But the corollary to that is that, and I think of it in a metaphor, even if you know why the dog is growling, you don't let it bite you. So even if you trust that everyone's trying their best, if you see that they're not, if it's not safe to be around them for whatever reason, or it's not healthy for you to be around them, then you don't be around them, even though you understand why they're doing what they're doing.
That's completely logical, isn't it? It makes complete sense.
Yeah. It took me a long time to learn that one, though.
I know what you mean, because I think people can, especially when they're very kind people, we always want to understand where other people are coming from and, excuse behavior. But you're quite right in that, there has to be boundaries, don't there?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And that there's nothing wrong with that. No. Good.
But I think that's the main thing. And then the other one is just simply, the world is so full of wonder and beauty, and everything is fascinating. Isn't this wonderful? Isn't it great to be alive?
Yeah.
Just that. Aww. Life is sweet.
Oh, that's so nice. How lovely. I think if asked, mine would be something really like miserable.
Like what? What would your maxim for life be?
Well, I don't have any overall ones, but one of my proverbs that I really, really like, and I think I would probably quote, is like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because I just really believe that. It doesn't talk about all life. That's not my whole attitude to life, but I just think it's really true in that you can, say you're going to do something, or you want to do something, or it doesn't matter unless you actually do the bloody thing. But see, that's me. Well, much nicer than me.
You could turn that on its head and go, okay, the road to heaven is paved with action. Every step takes you further forward to bliss.
That's true. That's a much nicer way of telling it. I'm even using the dualistic Christian phrasing, and I don't even believe in hell. We're in hell now. But yeah.
And also paradise.
Yes, quite right.
But that just reminds me of the bit in the Thomas the Rhymer ballad, and see you there, that bonny, bonny road, that I can't remember the rest of it, but it's talking about the third road. So you've got the road to heaven and the path of righteousness, and you've got the road of the road to hell, and it looks all easy, but actually no one really cares much about it. And then you've got the third road, the bonny, bonny road that leads to Elfland, where we must go. And it's like, no, actually, I'm going to go that way.
Yeah, that's so nice. Oh, I've never heard that. How lovely. Yeah.
Oh.
Lovely. How lovely to be freed from our dualistic binary experience.
It would be nice.
It would be nice, yeah. It's the future, definitely. All right, what else have I got anything else to ask you? Maxim, well, I think we've covered most of it, and I suppose I just want to revisit, what was the name of your website for when it goes live? And I will also put it in the links underneath.
Thank you. It's nice and simple. It is theenchantedacademy.com.
Super. And what are the names of the books that people can buy at the moment?
I have them here, so you can see them.
Yes.
Okay, so the first one, well, in fact, I'll show you these two. So these two are Pagan Portals books. They're published by Moon Books, and they are Your Fairy Magic and Gods and Goddesses of Wales.
Lovely.
So that one's about tuning into the sort of natural magic of self, and balancing that with relating to more fae beings. And Gods and Goddesses of Wales is working through the Mabinogion, the 4 branches of the Mabinogion, and talking about some of the beings within there. And it actually starts out with a variety of bits about like the philosophy behind what a deity is and different types of beings and the history, like really, really briefly, because it's only an introduction. Then the other 2 that I have out are, this is the relevant one, All That Glitters, Wanderings and Wanderings of a Changeling Bard. That's by Herbury Books, and that's a book of poetry with prose. So it's all about fairies, and one person's journey into fairy. But there are also tips and suggestions and things for how you can navigate it safely, because it isn't necessarily the safest place to go. But there's sort of, so there's that. And then the other one, which I'm going to show, which is sort of my alias, is called Twisted. And that's actually, the subtitle of that is Honest Reflections of a Kinky Witch.
Oh, right. Could you hold it up a bit more?
I don't know how it's got
there you go. That's fine. Yeah. Ooh,
is that okay?
That's nice. Yeah, that's a nice cover. Lovely.
It's really pretty.
Okay.
So that's again, poetry and prose, exploring BDSM and kink, and touching on magic in relation to that, because magic weaves throughout everything that I do. And as I say, I've got Folktales, Fairies and Spirits is the next book that's coming out. And then there's going to be the next one that I'm writing at the moment is kind of a corollary to Twisted. It's called Crimson Craft, Sexual Magic for the Solo Witch.
Oh,
and it's all about that. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's all about that sort of the importance of embodiment and sensual pleasure, and the way that connects us to magic, rather than transcending and trying to get away from this world. Is sort of that third world of coming back in, and touching on some skirting around some taboo elements of where that intersects with sex.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. Is that with Moon as well, or is that?
Yeah, that's with Moon Books.
Okay.
So yeah, that will be out some point next year, assuming that I'm on time with handing it in.
Oh, I look forward to that as well. That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to finish it there before we get cut off after an hour of recording. But Halo, it was so lovely to talk to you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. I know people will be really fascinated with this interview.
Well, it was really lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And you have ended up in darkness, but your face is still lit up.
So look how dark
beautiful.
It got. I'm just like glowing. I'm so white. Unbelievable. Okay. All right. Well, take care. Lovely to see you.
And you. And talk again. Bye.
Okay. Bye.